All right. Warmly welcome here to this press briefing after our discussion. Warmly welcome to Stockholm, Jens. Always great to have you here, especially nice to have you here during these times. During my first week as Swedish Prime Minister and my first international visit, I visited Jens at NATO headquarters in Brussels, and this was to demonstrate that because for the government's most important task in terms of foreign policy and security, as I described it, the creation of the government together with Finland to complete the extension to NATO, to strengthen the Swedish defense, and to maintain our obligations as a member and to systematically integrate with NATO's different structures. This is a paradigm shift for the Swedish security policy. This is what we're doing. Just a couple of minutes ago, we finished the meeting with the party leaders for all the parliamentary parties who support the Swedish accession to NATO. I wanted everyone to get a chance to get an informal discussion with Jens about where we are right now, what else we can do to make the process quicker, how we could consider Sweden's and Finland's joint journey, and what are the risks and the opportunities in place. And Jens patiently answered all the questions which came from the Swedish party leaders. Earlier today, I visited I informed all the parties and the head of the state about the NATO government bill, which will be proposed by the government. As we know, that there is a very strong and very broad support in the Swedish Riksdag for extension to NATO. And 30 minutes from now, there'll be a government meeting to make the formal decision to make the Swedish NATO bill to propose it to the Riksdag. It's our opinion that the Riksdag, the Swedish Parliament, will make a decision on the NATO issue within a couple of weeks. And by that time, Sweden will be completely ready to assent to NATO after ratification by Hungary and Turkey, which means that Sweden will be moving at the same pace as Finland. This information has been also provided to our Finnish friends. This week on Thursday, the government will make a decision on a completely new terror legislation after the decision by the Riksdag, by the Parliament. We believe that will enter into force on the 1st of June to ban participation in terrorist organizations. This is basically a decision which has nothing to do with the NATO application. It stands on its own legs. Sweden has had issues with these activities. Other countries have had stronger protection for this, but this is also an improvement of Swedish work to help other countries to fight international terrorism. And this also means that we make a decisive step in terms of the implementation of the trilateral agreement between Sweden, Turkey, and Finland. So to strengthen the Swedish legislation against terror, that's good for Sweden, but also it's good for the future allies in terms of the NATO perspective. So on the Swedish side, we have delivered when it comes to all the sections of the trilateral agreement. We continue to implement the agreement up until we become the members and after as members of NATO. Turkey knows well, and they know about the threat from terrorism, specifically from PKK, or from the Swedish side, the law enforcement agencies have increased their fight against the terrorism, and the Swedish security police has made a statement, as you know, that individuals linked to PKK use different criminal methods to collect the money which is used to fund terrorism, no matter whether it was directed at Sweden or other countries. The amounts for these schemes could be quite extensive. The focus of the government with regards to fight against the organized crime will also make PKK's activities more difficult. And despite the organizational links, our law enforcement agencies are working on prosecuting this crime. So this also applies to individuals in Sweden who are linked to PKK. In that context, I'm looking forward to reports from 12 different agencies which cooperate against serious and organized crime, and this report will be published later this March. PKK's activity finally is also instrumentalized in other manners. It's not difficult to imagine the foreign actors which are strongly against Swedish membership in NATO, want to use the extensive extension process and the focus on PKK's activities in Sweden in order to run influence campaigns in order to take advantage of the situation. And the longer the process continues, the higher are the risks. On the 9th of March, the next trilateral meeting between Turkey, Sweden and Finland will take place. Oskar Stensson and Jan Knutsson will travel from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They will travel to Brussels for new negotiations, and this is where we present in detail exactly what measures have been taken since the last meeting on the part of Sweden. We continue the broad coalition in Sweden with the parties which support NATO in the process to take Sweden into NATO. And we also continue the close cooperation which I and Magdalena Andersson has had since our joint decision in May in this particular room that we together want to take Sweden into NATO. This has also been characteristic for our international contacts, the security conference in Munich and the conference with Finland and Norway at Harpsund last week. And our message is clear. We want support. We want to help from NATO. We want to provide joint security to NATO. We know that we bring capacities and abilities into the NATO cooperation. And for the first time ever, Sweden and Finland, between the 9th and 15th of March, will take part in a NATO exercise in our status as invitees. This training exercise will involve military and civil staffs in NATO countries, Stockholm, Helsinki, and the NATO Strategic Command. Sweden is safer now compared to when we applied for membership in NATO, thanks for the security assurances, which we have received from large and important NATO countries. And there's a lot of strong support from other NATO countries for Sweden and Finland to become members of NATO. We live, as you all know, in dangerous times. This is the worst times for Ukraine. To strengthen NATO is something which is very important to everyone who sees these threats today. And this is what we discussed in detail with Jens Stoltenberg. Jens, thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister Kristersson. Dear Ulf, thank you for the possibility to conduct the meeting here in Stockholm. And thank you for, it's always good to come to Stockholm, especially today. We could discuss Sweden's road towards NATO. And there was an opportunity to meet the representatives of the different political parties in the Swedish Parliament. This has been very fruitful to me. And this shows that me personally and NATO focus a lot on further ratification process, both for Sweden and Finland. I will move on to English, and I will take Q&A in Scandinavian.
He is preparing for more war, launching new offensives, mobilizing more forces, and reaching out to other authoritarian regimes for more weapons. So today we discussed the urgent need to step up and sustain our support for Ukraine's sake and also for our own security. I welcome the significant financial, humanitarian and military assistance Sweden is providing to Ukraine. This includes training, artillery ammunition and soon main battle tanks. Sweden is also playing a leading role through your presidency in the European Union, coordinating more support for Ukraine and more sanctions on Russia. More than a year since Russia's full-scale invasion, Ukraine stands defiant. NATO is united and our alliance is stronger than ever and will soon be larger. Today we discussed finalizing Sweden and Finland's accession to NATO. This is a top priority and we are making progress. Turkey has legitimate security concerns. No NATO ally has suffered as many terrorist attacks. I welcome that Sweden has stepped up in the fight against terrorism, including the PKK. by introducing new terrorist legislation and strengthening counter-terrorism cooperation with Ankara. I also welcome that Sweden is ensuring that there are no restrictions on arms exports to Turkey. Sweden has delivered on its commitments under the trilateral memorandum, and the time has come to finalize the ratification process. I recently met with President Erdogan, and I'm glad that he agreed to restart meetings of the Permanent Joint Mechanism. I have convened another meeting of Turkey, Finland and Sweden at NATO headquarters on Thursday. I also welcome that the Hungarian Parliament has started discussions on ratification and expect the process to be completed shortly. Sweden and Finland's membership will make our alliance stronger, with highly capable forces and advanced defense industry, and years of experience training and operating together with NATO allies. Sweden and Finland's applications have already strengthened your security. You are sitting around the NATO table, integrating into our political and military structures, and exercising more with allied forces. NATO has increased its presence in the Nordic region, and many allies have extended security assurances to Sweden and Finland. So it is inconceivable that NATO would not act if your security was threatened. Your invitation to join the alliance has demonstrated once again that our door remains open. President Putin wanted less NATO. He is getting the exact opposite, more NATO. So there, Ulf, thank you again for an excellent meeting, for your personal leadership, and for Sweden's strong commitment to NATO. I look forward to welcoming Sweden and Finland as full members of the alliance in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jens. And now I open the floor to questions. We open the floor questions. Ann Tiber here in the middle, blue jacket, TV4. Ulf Kristersson. What kind of expectations do you have with respect to the meeting of Thursday? What do you believe will come out of this meeting, considering that Turkey, before the election, will pause its parliamentary session? What's the schedule for Sweden when it comes to sovereigntification by Turkey? The expectations are basically not highly just to have good conversation to restart. This is something I've said earlier, where we had some problematic weeks where the discussions were stopped, so it's good that they restarted. Every meeting has been quite not very dramatic. We have presented what Sweden and Finland has done, and we had a discussion with Turkey, and right at this stage there's quite a lot to tell them, specifically the terror legislation. It's much more specific now, so basically it's a working meeting. Will become slightly dramatic because the working meeting have been suspended since earlier. It hasn't been confirmed that the Turkish election will take place on the 14th of May, but I will wait until it's confirmed, and I will know when the Turkish parliament will close before the election, when they will reconvene after the election. Our basic desire is that Sweden and Finland would join NATO in conjunction with the Vilnius summit. That is still there, but we also know that Turkey makes Turkish decision. Question to Jens Stoltenberg: if Sweden and Finland do not join NATO by the Vilnius summit, how delayed will the process become in that case? What would it mean if Sweden misses to join by the time of the Vilnius summit? My goal, what I work for, is that both Sweden and Finland should become full members of NATO as soon as possible, at least by the Vilnius summit. I cannot give any guarantees. The decision will be taken. The decision which NATO has taken, as NATO has been taken, the important decision to invite Sweden and Finland was taken at the NATO summit in June last year, and the NATO countries has followed the membership protocol for Sweden and Finland, and it has been signed by all the member countries in Sweden. What So now it's the individual decision by which has to be 28 of the NATO members have ratified, 2 haven't ratified. But when I'm working with and I'm in contact with Turkey to contribute to make sure that the ratification takes place as soon as possible. And so far, this is the fastest membership process in the modern history of NATO. Sweden and Finland applied in May of last year. Already in June, they were invited to become full members. And 28 countries have already ratified the protocols. And as the Prime Minister said, Sweden and Finland are in a much more secure position compared to when they applied, because they're being integrated in NATO's structures through their status as invitees. NATO is also increased its presence in the Nordic area. Sweden and Finland have been granted different security assurances from, among other things, from USA, the largest NATO country, and therefore it's inconceivable that Sweden and Finland will be subject to military threats without NATO's reaction. So right now, Sweden and Finland are in a better position compared to before, and 2, we're doing what we can to conclude the ratification process as soon as possible. So what is the answer to the question? Sweden will become a member. The question is when. And we're doing what we can to conclude the process as soon as possible. Okay, thank you, SVT Blue Jacket. Try to be brief. Question to both of you. What do you believe about the possibilities to reach a deal regarding ammunition to Ukraine at the meeting tomorrow, with the meeting of the defense ministers? How do you comment the information in the Ukrainian that the Nord Stream could have been attacked by a pro-Ukrainian group? I don't know whether it's completely clear. It's Kaja Kallas's initiative initially from Estonia that we should help each other, the European countries should help each other for this, and this initiative from the European Commission. I don't know all the minutiae, whether the agreement has been reached and how this should be done or not. So let me come back to you. When it comes to the second issue, I don't have any further comments right now. In Sweden, there is an ongoing criminal investigation when it comes to Nord Stream, so I don't plan to comment on this information at this stage. When it comes to ammunition, I'll take part in the meeting tomorrow with the EU, but the EU will be taking the decision. What I can say is that NATO countries, a lot of EU members, are now increasing the production of arms and ammunition in order to deliver more ammunition to Ukraine. This is a war of exhaustion, and this is this fight of logistics to get the arms and ammunition for, and so far NATO countries and partner countries, with which NATO is working very closely, that we have reduced our stocks of ammunition to give to Ukraine, but the use of ammunition in Ukraine is higher than their production, and it's not a sustainable situation in a long-term perspective. Therefore, during this autumn, the defense industry in NATO countries has decided to increase the production. Several NATO countries have increased the production, and also EU countries. And now there are further measures from the EU which would strengthen the process even more to get more ammunition, and the countries go into the so-called joint procurement procedure. This is something which NATO has done for many years, will continue doing that. But it's not, if it's several countries or separate countries which supply arms and increase their production. The important thing is that it happens. And in order for that to happen, there are contacts between the defense interests, and there are several other NATO countries which have had contacts with the defense industries to increase the production. I know that Sweden and Finland has contributed a lot. Thank you. This is a question to both of you. Which challenges are there in terms of the restart of the discussions or negotiations, which will be restarted on Thursday? Which are the challenges? This question to both of you. And then I'd like to follow up what my colleagues from SVT said. when it comes to information from New York Times. What kind of information does the Swedish government, Swedish agents have together with NATO regarding the information which was presented that a pro-Ukrainian group could have sabotaged the North Stream? Let's start with the challenges as far as I can see. They're not on the merits. They have been major, but they're part of the trilateral memorandum. And there, I believe, and I know that Jens Stoltenberg has emphasized that as well, we have really implemented what we agreed upon to implement, and a large and important step which we'll take now on Thursday with the government decision regarding the new anti-terrorist legislation. So this has been important. This was important to follow up. For me, as in many countries, this becomes an issue of domestic policy. There is an upcoming election. Countries are busy with their domestic issues. And Turkey has suffered from a horrible earthquake, which obviously requires a lot of efforts. I'm more concerned about other things that the Swedish or the Finnish ascension is not at the top of the agenda. I have all respect for that. But at the same time, there's an ongoing war in our vicinity, and it's important that the process which started 1 year ago will finish as soon as possible. And like I said earlier, I will not provide any further comments. There is an ongoing investigation in Sweden, and I will not provide any comments until the criminal investigation is concluded. When it comes to the meeting on Thursday between Turkey, Sweden, and Finland, the goal there is to get unity that Sweden and Finland have delivered in terms of what they undertook in Madrid. This is which they, in my opinion, they clearly have, both in terms of increasing the fight against terror, but also to remove restrictions when it comes to arms exports. But Turkey has to know it's important for them to meet, to discuss, and we'll see whether we can secure that there is an understanding of the implementation of the memorandum. And what the Prime Minister said, it's important to meet if there have been issues and to discuss these issues because there has been no meetings within the trilateral mechanism for a while. When it comes to Nord Stream 2 pipelines, the situation is that what we know that there has been an attack, that there was an instance of sabotage, and this was an attack against critical infrastructure for Europe. But there are ongoing investigations and inquiries, and it shouldn't be right to speculate who is behind that until the investigations and inquiries have been concluded. What we can say for certainty is that these attacks show the vulnerability of crucial infrastructure, internet cables, gas pipelines, oil pipelines, thousands of kilometers of critical infrastructure, which is important for our modern societies. And NATO for many years have been dealing with this security of infrastructure, but after the attacks in the Baltic Sea, we have doubled our military presence in the North Sea and the Baltic Sea. We have also increased the cooperation between NATO countries to exchange information and to strengthen preparedness to better stop further such attacks in the future. We have created a separate unit to coordinate the measures at the NATO headquarters between the member states and also private industry, which are also an important role in terms of this infrastructure to increase the security for undersea infrastructure. Last question, TT. Question to Mr. Stoltenberg. Is there any hope that already on Thursday we can get Turkey to agree that the trilateral memorandum has been fulfilled? Well, I want to be careful in terms of pre-announcing about what will come out of this meeting. it will make this meeting even more difficult. What's important is that a meeting will take place, that we get the process going again. And from my point of view, this is, and I've said this earlier, but I said it both in Ankara and Istanbul last year, this autumn, and in Ankara a couple of weeks ago. I made it clear that Sweden and Finland have fulfilled the items, the requirements which follow from the trilateral memorandum. Therefore, the time has come to ratify Sweden and Finland. My question to the Prime Minister, do you believe that the new terror act will become a strong blow against PKK's activities in Sweden? Could it lead to further extraditions to Turkey, for example, or any other way? Well, the specific consequences are quite difficult to see right now, but this will be a serious blow against people who take part in terror activities. I'm convinced about that. There are reasons why other countries have legislation of this nature in place. There's a reason why we want to introduce this legislation in Sweden. That's why we change our basic laws in order to create possibilities for such legislation. Some people say that this is quite a profound legislation. I agree, because we have serious issues, serious problems with this issue. The problem in Sweden has been that we didn't take it seriously enough, these types of terror activities or participation or financing, which was directed at other countries rather than Sweden. Now we take it really seriously, and I'm sure that it will be noticeable once legislation has been introduced. Thank you. This is the last question. Thank you. Thank you.